So where I last left off, I had to have an invasive eye surgery. Um, to this day, I don't fully know what they did during the surgery. I told the doctor that I didn't really want to know. I was also given the option of local anesthesia versus complete anesthesia. I chose complete anesthesia because I didn't want any part of me to be conscious during this surgery. As far as I know, they somehow got into the eye internally. They cleaned away the blood and they went on to laser a part of the eye. Because laser surgery actually does hurt a lot in my experience. Because I was under complete anesthesia, they took that opportunity to add to that. Once the surgery is over, they fill the eye with a certain type of gas because the substance which the human eye is made of is hard to replicate. This gas is a temporary solution until the eye itself starts to fix this. For the next 2 weeks, I still couldn't see anything with that eye because the gas was blocking my vision, and I could see a large air bubble. So I had to walk around with my eye patch to prevent headaches. The problem with this type of surgery is that you're essentially given two options. I could either A, not have the surgery and walk around with this blood spot possibly forever, being essentially blind, or I could have the surgery. And you might think, well, that's an easy decision, but the problem with the surgery is that it damages the actual eye. Every time they laser your eye, they give you an injection, they do more damage. And though this damage is minimal, when you have to have as much laser eye surgery as I did, the damage is intense. And it's now been almost 2 years. And I pretty much am completely blind in my left eye. I can only see about 10%. I can make out certain colors, and that's about it. I can no longer read with my left eye. I can't recognize people. I can't even see shapes with it. If you're wondering what that looks like, you can use some kind of photo editing software and up the blurriness. I'd say up to about 90%, to where you almost see nothing. Fortunately, I still had a working right eye, but my right eye had also started to bleed. It had also needed surgery. And although the surgery up until that point was only the injections and laser eye surgery, it was still significant enough for me to have to get repeatedly tested. And I could only see about 70% with my right eye. Around the time that my left eye started to bleed, I had to quit school. I was an art student. I was doing my internship, and it became very clear to me that I could no longer take the pressure of having to do an internship, having to graduate, along with, for the first time in essentially 15 years, take care of myself. Not to mention the pressure of having to go to the hospital at least once a week at that point. A few months ago, I actually found out that during 2019, I visited the hospital a total of 62 times. So that's almost twice a week. Last summer, in 2020, for the third time, my left eye had started to bleed and it wasn't fading. So it was the third time that I had to have intensive surgery. And since then, my left eye has pretty much become useless. Every surgery cost a little bit more. Sadly, that isn't where it ends, as later that summer I had to have surgery on my right eye as well, the intensive surgery. When I was last checked, I can see about 30% with my right eye. And with the 10% that I can still see in my left eye, that's practically nothing. The tempo at which I read these days is slow, extremely slow. I can't watch subtitled shows because I can't keep up. I have always had a love of literature, and I can't even read a book anymore. And the problem with that is that I care very much for the heart of the writing, and I believe that audiobooks don't do justice to this kind of writing sometimes. Sadly, audiobooks is what I've been reduced to at this point. It's my only way of still reading, and although I do enjoy them, I would prefer it very much if I could actually read the books that I want to read instead of listening to them. I've always been a very private and secluded person because in my own experience, every time that I express any kind of positive emotion, it gets shut down by either people telling me that I shouldn't feel that way, that what I feel is wrong, or simply my own psyche that has become so used to those patterns that I just decide I'd be better off not feeling those things. This created a pattern for me where I can only feel negative things. Sometimes I do think that I'm doing better, but just a few weeks ago I created a drawing that was inspired by my all-time favorite band, and when I posted it to social media, both the lead singer and the band's account itself liked the post, which was like a seal of approval, yet I felt absolutely nothing at this. It's extremely frustrating when you're so used to being on your own to suddenly need other people, and it's not a choice that I ever had to make. It was something that I was forced to make. And I don't want to need other people, but I do, because I can no longer function on my own. If you've been listening to this point, you might be wondering, how does it work being blind and being an artist? And you might also wonder, well, it's not really blindness, it's a visual impairment. But I say blindness because it's simply easier to explain than what is actually happening. About a year and a half ago, I went digital with my drawings. And I recently tried drawing on paper again for the first time. And I simply couldn't do it because I couldn't see enough. When you draw digitally, you can zoom in to ridiculous amounts, and that's what I need. It's not something that I want to do, but again, it's something that I have to do. You can't really see it right now. I purposely chose not to use a face cam or anything. Part of that is because I'm too insecure to show my face, but my entire body is tensing up right now. I'm actually physically shaking because of the anxiety and stress that I feel when I describe these things that happen to me. And this is still just the tip of the iceberg. You pretty much now know how I went blind, and if you've been paying attention, you might also know that it's my own fault. And I do blame myself, which is something that I don't want to do, and when I say it out loud, a part of my mind does say, I didn't choose this. I never wanted to be depressed. I never wanted to have diabetes. I never wanted to not take care of my diabetes. I wanted to not have it, but I still wanted to be able to function normally. And I always remember that one of my physicians asked me what I found to be the hardest challenge with diabetes, and the answer that I gave was, it's always there. If I eat something or drink something, I need to be reminded of my diabetes. If I go out for a walk, it impacts my diabetes. And every time that I can read a fucking sentence, it's a reminder that I fucked up my life. There's this movie that I like. It's called Scent of a Woman. It sees Al Pacino star as a blind veteran. By the end of the movie, he intends to kill himself. And he's made that very clear right from the start. There's a person with him who he's never met before, but that person is there to take care of him, and he tells that person what his plans are for the weekend. He wants to listen to some music, go to a nice hotel, have sex, drive a nice car, and by the end of the weekend he intends to shoot himself. Near the end of the movie, when it's become very clear that he is suffering from something, there's a scene where he crosses the street, and both he and the person that takes care of him are standing on the sidewalk waiting for the light to turn green, and he just says, "This is taking too long," and walks into traffic. Although he isn't hit by a car, when he crosses the street, several cars stop, barely missing him, and when he reaches the other side, he walks into a trash can and falls on the ground. As far as I know, Al Pacino took some kind of special training to focus his eyes on not reacting. And I think it's one of the best portrayals of what blindness looks like, but more importantly, to me at least, it's a perfect representation of how a man can be defeated by such an ailment. I've met many people who are blind as well, because I work at a organization that employs blind people. And every person there can tell their story. And there are people who will listen, of course, but when you've actually experienced it, you know that there's something that they're also not saying. They're not saying which part of them hurts. The part of them that wants to see their loved ones, but actually can't. The part of them that is defeated.